One of the things about magic that we don't hear much about is how long it can take to manifest magical outcomes. It's a touchy subject because if you're holding yourself accountable to tracking your results and therefore your effectiveness at magic, how long something takes to manifest may cast doubt on what you can count as a success. I know I've questioned myself like this many times. But the thing is that we have such an issue with expecting instant gratification in everything these days that we almost always need to temper our expectations more than we think that we do. There are small asks and big asks, small spells and big spells, and some outcomes that we desire are hardly probable already, so all we need to do is ask. Other things we want are less likely to happen naturally and require more details to fall in line, so reality has to shift more to compensate. When we want something really unlikely to occur, it takes more effort, more magic to make it possible. And while you're investing heavily into your desired outcomes magically, you have to be very careful not to indulge in the infamous lust for result, to avoid undermining all of your magical efforts. The bigger the ask, the more time it may take for the outcome to manifest, and the longer that you have to maintain a positive mental attitude while avoiding lust for result. In reality, many times, we're not even entirely clear on what we want when we start wishing for it and working towards it magically. In those situations, manifesting your dreams is a whole process, including desire work, strategic planning and divination, magical workings, tending those dreams, as I mentioned, and often much later, the actual outcome that you're intending towards. As you make progress on your journey, you're always dreaming ahead, a little further down the road, with what's far away moving closer and coming into focus as it does. Big journeys aren't experienced all at once, and where we've been affects how we'll travel from then on. So there's a feedback loop between the experience and the dreaming ahead that refreshes and reinforms your vision of the future as you go. That makes your desired outcome something of a moving target, which conventional wisdom would say is bad if you're trying to produce a specific effect. But actually, this approach ensures that you get what you truly want after all of the evolution that you go through to get it. This is why I refer to this process of keeping the faith long enough for your big dreams to manifest as tending your dreams rather than just waiting patiently for your dreams to come true. It's far more engaged of a process than waiting passively. You have to keep intending, keep manifesting, while also holding yourself in perfect faith that everything you want has already happened in the future. In this episode, I'm going to share my best tricks to strengthen your intentions, to keep the faith over the long periods between doing the magic and actually getting what you want, as well as ways to avoid the dreaded lust for result that works against you through your own unconscious impulses. There are some very good techniques which reliably conquer the most challenging aspects of this process, and we'll discuss those in detail. But really, the biggest obstacle to magical success is the tendency to get in your own way. Lack of confidence, self-limiting thoughts, and contradicting priorities will sabotage your magical workings faster than anything else. So I'll share some thoughts about how to frame your approach to avoid these common pitfalls as well. And I'll share stories from my wife and I's experiences on our journey out of suburbia and mainstream life, manifesting our dream to build a natural and spiritual sanctuary in the Yucatan jungle. We spent almost 2 years dreaming and planning our move to Mexico, and we've been here in the Yucatan now for almost 2 years as well, and we're just now looking at actually starting construction in the near future. Obviously, we thought we'd be further along by now. But one of the realities of following your dreams that everyone on such a path will inevitably face is that these things take years. There's no instant gratification. Nothing worth doing is easy, and it's seldom quick either. Perseverance, patience, and persistence. These are the skills of the master manifester. Because while magic can make the highly improbable possible, it still has to find a, scare quotes, mundane path, however improbable, to follow. That often requires patience because while the unique combination of factors that your desired outcome requires may not currently be present, they can certainly become so in the future. And if these last few years have taught us anything, it's that we should not underestimate how different future conditions can be. So with that in mind, stay tuned for episode 13, Tending Your Dreams, in just a moment. Welcome to the Postmugglism podcast. I'm Nate, aka Postmugglism, and this is my lucky 13th episode titled Tending Your Dreams. This week, we're going to think differently about time to understand how our linear perception of it makes working magic challenging because we struggle to have faith in the very futures that we're trying to create. And for real-world examples, I'm going to share stories from my own experiences over the last almost 4 years now, while my wife and I have been chasing our dreams into the jungles of the Riviera Maya in Mexico. Thanks for listening to my podcast. If this is your first time, you should click the subscribe button wherever you're listening so that you get notified when new episodes of this show come out. And since platforms continue to play dumb games with us, using algorithms that serve their ends rather than serving you the content that you've requested, I highly recommend that you sign up for my email newsletter on my website at www.postmugglism.com. When you subscribe by email, you get notified about all of my content, regardless of what platform it's posted on and what the algorithm is doing that day. This week, I want to share with you one of the most helpful lessons I've learned about magic, and really life itself, since beginning this crazy adventure to move to Mexico, build a homestead and spiritual healing center in the jungle just south of Cancun and the Riviera Maya. Manifesting your dreams into reality with magic is absolutely possible, even big, outlandish dreams, given you have the patience and the faith to see it through. You see, it takes what time it takes for dreams to come true, and it all comes down to probability. The more likely that something is without your interference to take place, the less the universe has to bend over backwards to make your dreams possible. So some dreams, small, easily achievable dreams, are even easier to achieve, maybe even effortless, with the use of magic. Some dreams, however, bigger and more improbable dreams, these can take a while to come to fruition, over a long period of time, and probably with a lot of effort. And this is key. This doesn't mean that your magic was any less effective. It probably means that the likelihood that your dream would have come true without the benefit of magic is very low naturally, and significant shifts were required to move that future you wanted into place. Magical outcomes manifest on their own time, and that's just something that we have to navigate. Timing is everything in many aspects of life, and magic is certainly no different. Magical timing is incredibly important. So it probably shouldn't come as a shock that it plays a uniquely important role in producing magical effects. The right way to look at it is that your desired outcome becomes real as soon as you work your magic, somewhere on the timeline, but probably not at the same point on the timeline that you're currently at. But that doesn't make it any less real, just less accessible for the moment. That's where patience and faith come in. And faith is a topic that I was once very opposed to, in principle, primarily for the purpose of maintaining responsible skepticism. But nevertheless, it was quite an obstacle to my success as a magician. Faith allows us to be patient and to wait for the future we want instead of constantly trying to force the issue with more effort, more magic, and so on. These interventions often create entropy, adding new variables that may actually compete with your intent, or worse, allow your lust for results to subvert your desired outcome. The key is to be able to throw yourself completely into your working during the ritual, but then afterwards to be able to maintain the belief that your desired outcome is in process. It's already on its way to you, but just hasn't arrived yet. Thinking about how much you want something, rather than living as much like you already have what you want as possible, short circuits your working because, instead of the outcome, you manifest the process. This is why when we're visualizing our intentions, that is, trying to picture the outcomes that we want, we don't want to focus on the moment where we receive the thing that we want, but further down the road than that, to an occasion that would never be possible unless your desired outcome was already achieved. Meaning that it's better to visualize being healthy than healing. Better to see yourself in your dream home, in my case, than building it, and so on. And if you're good at magic, you can do this on demand during ritual to overwhelm yourself with the desire and intention for a particular outcome. But how do you let go of the obsession after the working while still holding it in a positive state of belief in your mind, sometimes for months or even years? That's quite a delicate balance to maintain for that length of time. It might feel like lying to yourself a little bit, a little disingenuous, to pretend that your magic has already come true when you can see plainly in the world around you that it hasn't. But that's the key to this part of the process, because telling yourself that the magic has already begun coming together in ways that you can't possibly detect and that you'll become aware of when the time is right is the simple mind trick that helps you sidestep the issue of lust for result. By telling yourself as often as possible that it has already come true, we just haven't caught up to it yet in the timeline. And big plans, big projects aren't really one intention. They're many intentions of varying size and complexity that must all come together to make your dreams come true. In our case, we're on a journey to build a natural and spiritual sanctuary in the jungle. So we needed to get ourselves from Dallas to the Riviera Maya, and we needed to find and acquire property in the jungle, and we still need to build a home. And there's lots of working on the land that's required to cultivate the jungle, or parts of it at least, and to create our permaculture homestead. There's soil to reclaim, plants to find and grow, trees to source, plant, and nurture, animals to raise, gardens to build, and features to construct to improve the land. All of these details deserve our focus, attention, and intention daily, and in specific magical workings as well. All this stuff we have to think about gives us plenty to dream on, plenty to visualize, etc. But dreaming the future isn't just about picturing the most exciting bits. It's also about working through the challenges, exploring your options, and researching everything you can find related to your dreams to expand your awareness of them and infuse them with more detail. From the time that we started planning our escape from suburbia, we lived in Dallas, Texas at the time, it took about 18 months for us to renovate and sell our home, to get our temporary visas to Mexico, to work on a financial plan, and to cover the other requisite details. And during that time, it was difficult not to drive ourselves crazy with desire to actually get to live out these dreams. Then, once we'd settled here in Mexico, it took a few months to find our property and an additional 18 extremely long months to actually buy it and to get the title in our hands. We have to keep thinking about the project. That's just fundamentally unavoidable. And therefore, to keep those thoughts positive, we focus our energy on refining our vision of the future as we learn more and benefit from the experiences that we gain along the way. During those long final 18 months while we were still living in Dallas, the key was learning by hand. I built a pretty significant garden despite knowing that we wanted to move out sooner or later because it helped me get back into the swing of things with gardening after many years of stepping away from the practice. And on a spiritual level, spending time with my hands in the dirt and finding ways to support life brought me closer to spirit than any particular ritual that I've ever tried. Sarah and I spent many hours talking about our dreams and plans, sharing our favorite visualizations of how we each pictured the future, and meditating and intending on our dreams, both together and separately, as often as possible. We dedicated an altar to our project, a vision board, and many individual magical workings. We visualize our dreams as we fall asleep each night, and upon waking every morning. Several psychedelic experiences were dedicated to exploring the dream and allowing it to reveal itself to us. We kept black books per Aidan Wachter's protocol in Weaving Fate. We immersed ourselves in working the dream over and over in our heads, refining it and dreaming it in more and more detail through research, practice, and a constant barrage of magic. Despite throwing everything in the kitchen sink at making our dream come true, we've been able to avoid the dreaded lust for results by employing two strategies. First, by visualizing a point in the timeline after our desired outcome would have to have already manifested, we avoid obsessing about the specific shift that we're trying to cause. So this might look like visualizing yourself exercising rather than healing from an injury, if it were a health-related working. Or visualizing taking your significant other out for a celebration instead of getting that job that you want. Secondly, we avoid lusting for results by layering our requests, each targeting a different aspect of our grand vision. This is where refining the dream through practice and research and regular visualization and daydreaming comes in handy. The more details that become visceral in your imaginings, the more specifics that you can identify and then lean into magically. So we worked magic to find the right place to live, to meet the right people, to learn everything that we'd need to know, to protect ourselves on our long international drive, to make sure our dogs would be happy and safe, to negotiate with the spirits of the land and to be accepted by its people, and on and on and on. And we spent time visualizing every possible detail, where we'd stay before we built our house, the time that we'd spend on the beach, what it might look like in our jungle home, what our orchard and groves of banana trees and many gardens and walking paths and living altars would look like, everything that we want in our future sanctuary. The way that lust for results works is not so much that if you think about the outcome you want, again, after you're working, then you're going to undo all of your magic. It's instead that your desire becomes the focus. If you're visualizing what it's like to live in your ideal future, then you're not obsessing about how to get there, and you're not stewing in envy of your future self if you do it right. If you're always in a creative mode instead, then it's much less likely that you'll obsess about when your work is going to manifest, and instead you'll spend more of your energy intending for the details that matter most to you. Many of us, once we try to apply this process, quickly find that we're not really that clear about what we want after all. We might have a general idea or a vague feeling, but not a clear enough picture to paint, to describe, or to visualize. And this is a big problem. It's not, however, an uncommon problem. Most of us start our dreaming and planning in a generally vague state of awareness about what we think we want. Most of the time, we haven't fully considered what actually achieving our goals will be like because we're usually more concerned with how to get the things we want. And this is the problem. That path leads to lust for results. Instead of the how or the when, we should exclusively be focused on what we want to create, what it's like to live in the life that we want, not what it's like to achieve it. If you want to achieve something, go work hard. Magic will present your future to you in ways that most likely you won't be able to take credit for. In magic, we simply care about the end result. To produce a desired outcome, we need a clear mental image of it and focused intention over an extended period of time. And it's fine to start with a vague idea, but it's best to clarify that idea over time as it has a chance to percolate in your imagination. To encourage this, and to keep your creativity flowing throughout the potentially long dreaming process, praying for inspiration is remarkably effective. Remember that the process of manifesting your dreams is co-creative. Emphasis on the collaborative aspect here. It's not necessary to go it alone like this because the cosmos is highly invested in our existence and perfectly accessible if you know how to communicate with it. Asking the living, intelligent universe for its assistance in discovering your passion and your life's purpose is not only easy to do, it's essential to achieving anything of any meaning or value. We are the main characters in our own lives, but we're hardly the screenwriter or director. We take our cues and follow our marks and inject our creativity in the form of self-expression, but we don't design the sets, build the worlds, or narrate the thoughts of others. We simply exist within that world and attempt to play our role convincingly. And because dreaming and manifesting is a process that takes place over an unpredictable amount of time, there are also many opportunities for your dreams and plans to be ruined. Stacking a bunch of hopium on top of poorly constructed plans isn't good magic. What works much better is to outline the major aspects of your dreams that you must have and leave the non-essential aspects to the interpretation of fate. But this is a careful balancing act. Too little specificity, and we may end up with dreams that take the shape of what we thought we wanted, but are nonetheless unfulfilling. Or, if we are too specific, we may find that there are aspects that we thought that we wanted that we don't and are actually quite inconvenient. This is why dreaming, in tandem with spirit communication and divination, is such a powerful combination, because there's imagination, and then there's active imagination. The former is roughly just inside your head, but the latter is an invitation to the rest of the imaginal realm for participation. We are antennas for spirit, so spirit communication is always going on. But when we're transmitting our own creativity, it's like a two-way radio where only one participant can broadcast on the open channel at a time. We're either sending or receiving. When we're imagining, we're actively transmitting. But when instead we relax and enter a receptive state, ideas, feelings, senses, knowings, etc. come flooding in, and the co-creative process takes place in the ebb and flow of this exchange. To put it plainly, you have to be receptive to receive inspiration. So when you've reached the bottom of your creative well, you simply need to allow it to be refilled again through this process. Active imagination, or journeying, gives us the means to find answers to elusive questions and fuel for inspired dreaming. But often the imagery, sensations, and other experiences that we get from journeys are confusing and difficult to interpret. Sitting with them for a while is usually revealing, but even so, these inner journeys tend to produce hints that lead to more questions rather than clear answers. Employing divinatory methods like pendulums, tarot, and so on after journeying is a good way to make sense of the jumbled mental imagery of your inner travels. If you structure your journeys using the prompt and response method, you can take those responses and then ask clarifying questions about them using tarot and other methods. Prompt and response simply refers to the process of setting up a scene in the imagination in which our attention and intention are focused on a particular question or answer, and then moving into a receptive state where we basically just try to allow a response from the universe, the cosmos, collective unconscious, or whatever, to fill in the blank. We prompt, the universe responds. Then based on that response, we can generate relevant questions and use divinatory methods to expose the hidden metaphors within it. So dreaming the future that you desire is part unrestricted daydreaming, part research and experimentation, part visualization, part psychonautic gnosis, and a large portion of patience. We get closer to manifestable dreams through the crucible of active imagination. We refine and add color to our plans while not becoming obsessed about how or when they come about, and also not becoming too dogmatic about the details that don't really matter. It's admittedly a delicate balance, but you get a feel for this sweet spot very quickly once you get it right a couple of times and you see the results. But how do you keep all of this up over the long haul? And what about the bad times when things look hopeless and dark? How do you keep your faith when your faith is tested? This is a tough one, I know. Sarah and I spent the most energy in the year and a half it took to close on our property just trying to keep our cool. So it's a fucking process, man. What can I say? Some days are easier than others, and some days are a beating. I can't lie. But it becomes way easier to trust that everything is going to work out after the first couple of times that it does. And it's definitely been my experience that I'm generally okay with whatever pace things are moving along at, as long as I'm seeing some kind of positive traction somewhere. And we tend to keep that up as long as we stay in flow, moving into a right relationship. If we can keep that consistent, then everything else tends to be as well. And when it's not enough just to be flowing along, dreaming, and taking steps towards accomplishing our goals, if we hit a real snag, an unmovable force of some kind, then we break out the big magic, obviously. But most of the time, patience and faith are bigger obstacles than anything that you'll encounter out in the world. Our self-doubt, that nagging, questioning, insecure inner voice that plagues us all, that little fucker is the real problem. So what do we do about them, our inner naysayer? Well, regular prayer is key, for sure, to whichever spirits you're working with on your long-term projects. Prayer for a strong constitution, for patience, clarity, faith, discernment, and anything else that comes to mind. You can easily use tarot or some other divinatory method to test your assumptions again and again, and in our experience, you'll just keep getting progressively less helpful versions of the same answers. Yes, everything is going to work out, when it should, and no, you don't need to do anything. Just chill, bro, chill. This is what our spirit team is constantly telling us. And you can develop your faith as you go by taking small leaps with it at first, and then progressively larger leaps as you feel yourself coming into flow with the cosmos and things starting to fall into place. For us, that meant that in times when we were being tested, that we were able to reflect back on the good fortunes and undeniable magic that came previously in the form of things like meeting the perfect real estate agent who knew how to find the perfect little jungle community for us, finding an amazing lot that wasn't marked or marketed in any way. Hell, there wasn't even a road to it at the time. And a very patient seller who spoke English and took a liking to us. So many things have played out in incredibly beneficial ways that we couldn't have manufactured ourselves, and we've been provided many times lucky outcomes that we never could have even foreseen. Sometimes you have to wait for the right conditions to exist to support the best version of the outcome that you desire. And sometimes you can get in your own way by trying to think and solve your way through every delay. So you just divine the truth whenever you need to hear it. Are we still on track? Is there anything else I need to be doing to make our project a reality? Etc. But you got to learn to take the, no, bro, chill, as an answer. And other than patience, the other essential ingredient is positivity. A positive mental attitude, which accepts that the future that you want is coming but just hasn't arrived yet, reinforces all your magic and fills the void you're feeling with radiant confidence that dispels our darker impulses. Positivity is not only contagious, but it's also self-reinforcing, much like negativity, which also spreads within us much more quickly as we yield to it. We're always manifesting our reality, all the time, not just in magical workings. So if we're even unconsciously projecting negativity about our dreams, we're actively working against them. And I mean that literally. Every second you waste being negative about yourself or your dreams, you're making them more difficult to achieve. So stop doing that. Just say no to negativity. If dreams are seeds for the future, then they have to be tended like little sprouts. They are delicate, and their survival depends entirely on how nurturing their environment is. We have to plant our seeds in fertile soils, and then tend and protect them as they grow and mature. The use of positive language is very important when discussing your dreams, for the same reasons that you shouldn't plant seeds and then tell them that they're not going to grow. What do I mean by positive language? Well, obviously, try to avoid getting frustrated and talking about how slow things are going, or how it's impossible, or how you're afraid it will never happen, etc. Believe me, I know how hard this is. Also, try to avoid using if in the context of if our dreams come true, if we get the chance to do this, and so on. Instead, simply opt for when, as in when we get the chance to do this. When you pray, express gratitude before everything else, and frame your petitions as statements of gratitude, which also helps to put your awareness in the future after your desired outcome has already manifested, which is just good praxis. This might sound like, thank you, Pachamama, for all the bounty in our harvest this fall when you're planting in the spring. Or, Hecate, goddess of the crossroads, patroness of travelers, thank you for guiding and protecting my family on our upcoming journey. The words that you use when you speak about your dreams are powerful, and you should be intentional about what you say and how you say it. Staying positive will just make everything easier in the long run. Likewise, gratitude is an essential aspect of reciprocity, which must be satisfied for good things to continue to happen to you. But all of this is a waste if you fail in one other critical area. Whether or not you believe that you are affected by the opinions of others, you are certainly affected by their energy, and sometimes by their actions. When people have a problem with you, or are envious of you, or they're competing with you, it'll drain your energy to engage with them and leave you weaker as a result. Even your friends, if they doubt you or talk disparagingly about your dreams, will weaken your focus and the power of your intention. In many cases, it's best to keep your dreams private until you're ready to take the kind of actions that aren't possible to hide. No one is likely to support your endeavors until after you've taken meaningful steps anyway, so everyone will either withhold their opinions at best or speak negatively about your project at worst. And that negativity is incoherent with the future that you've selected. So when enough people cast enough negativity over your efforts, all your efforts can be undermined and overwhelmed, and your hopes can be dashed to pieces very quickly. If possible, surround yourself with people, at least when talking about your endeavor, that are excited about your possibilities, but give you straight, honest feedback. It does no good to have yes people around you. You need people who are willing to be skeptical if your ideas merit it, but also to listen fairly and give their feedback from a genuine desire to support your success. Being held accountable to your dreams is great. Being told they're impossible is not. Surround yourself with people who will hold you to your potential, not hold you back. And likewise, surround yourself with people, physically when possible, but digitally as well, who are engaged in their own pursuits. People whom you can admire and take inspiration and courage from when your own story temporarily stalls or becomes difficult. Now, let's review for a moment and bring all these different points together cohesively, and then get into some very actionable tech for turning these ideas into praxis, to carry us through the long process of making big dreams come true. Your intentions manifest into reality on their own time, which magic can help propel forward, no doubt, but constantly worrying about the future can just as easily be counterproductive to your progress. To avoid entropy in our workings and any destructive lust for results, we can employ a simple framework that sets us up for success automatically. In the simplest terms, we phrase our petitions as thanks. Thank you for making X possible, long before we've actually witnessed any change take place. And we establish the belief that our magic is immediately effective, somewhere on the timeline, even if we can't see it happening yet. And we recognize that the vague ideas that we get all excited about initially don't really have enough texture and detail to manifest yet. So we add that texture and granular detail through a cycle of research, experimentation, exploration, basically play, and both unrestricted daydreaming and deliberate contemplation. Plus, journeying or active imagination and using divination to interpret the resulting chaos into meaningful data. And we nurture the seeds of our future with focus, intention, positivity, and the support of friends and allies who believe in us. We protect them from exposure to naysayers and harsh realities ahead of their time. We recognize how tender our dreams are and do everything necessary to provide a good, nurturing environment for them to develop and grow. And when they've hardened off to their environment, having survived their first couple of challenges, they can become our inspiration as we labor at staying in flow over the years between the dream and the reality, when you finally get to live the magical life you've been working towards all this time. And when it comes to embodying these ideas into practice, there are a few techniques which we've found particularly reliable for grounding our imagination into actionable, mundane, and magical activity. If your dreams are big enough, they become all-consuming. At any given time in your life, there can really only be one or two main focuses, and less is more if you want to achieve those goals. Focus is key. Therefore, so is not spreading yourself too thin. And for that reason, part of taking on a big project is devoting yourself to it, mind, body, and soul. When you're ready to commit to a project in this way, you have to hold yourself accountable to keeping it a priority. The best way to do this is to formalize a general statement of intent, which is short, memorable, and easy to repeat. Then write that statement down and keep it with you at all times, repeating it upon waking, throughout the day, and just prior to falling asleep at night. This is part of the definite chief aim method described by Napoleon Hill, and it is an excellent foundational practice to keep yourself focused on the task at hand. Similarly, taking advantage of those first and last moments of consciousness in a day to program our minds through the use of these hypnopompic and hypnagogic windows of time is another excellent practice. The mind, as it approaches sleep or approaches a waking state, is sort of between sleep and awake in a state of fluid consciousness where dreams blend with reality and the mind is highly susceptible to influence. While you probably don't want anyone else whispering into your ears at these times, using them to reinforce your own intentions deliberately is quite useful. These are just generally good times to program your own mind for any reason, but dedicating them to supporting your big plans, your definite chief aim, is best praxis. Now, we already talked about journeying or active imagination for inspiration while fleshing out your grand plans, but you can and should use those same scenes that you created in your mind to send positive intentions to your endeavor. Visualize yourself regularly living the life that you want for 5 to 10 minutes at a time. And use the logic that I mentioned before about picking a point on the timeline past where you realize your goal to avoid fixating on the whys and whens. But I'd actually like to extend that idea by combining a vision board and a small altar. By placing the vision board, like a bulletin board with relevant photos of the things that you want, on the wall behind the altar. This way, as you meditate and pray at the altar, the vision board can inspire your visualizations and help you stay focused easily. A vision board is a pretty straightforward thing, but I'll devote just a minute to provide a relevant example. On our vision board, there are pictures of banana tree groves, compost piles, chickens and goats, toucans and monkeys, piles of fruit, the floor plan of our future house, and so on. We try to charge this with our intentions regularly by meditating on visuals inspired by those images, where we're going through our day doing the things that we look forward to doing in the future. It's a big bulletin board with lots of photos pinned and layered on top of each other, and we just add to it as we have new details to fill in the dream. As much as we try to avoid it, eventually every project faces delays and opposition. This is a critical time for dreamers like us because it's not until we've really been tested in some way and overcome it that we develop that ability to walk in faith. Trust that it's coming. It's going to happen again and again to help reinforce this lesson. When it happens to you, lean in. Pray harder. Ask for signs that you're on the right track, or not. Ask for guidance. Do as much divination as necessary. Ask the hard questions. Ignoring some form of rot in your grand plan risks its success unnecessarily. So confront your obstacles head on, but also recognize that the right way to address those problems, sometimes, is to have patience and wait for the situation to change in some way. If something is legitimately wrong and you're encountering problem after problem, struggling to make any progress at all, always assume that the problem is you, at least at first. And I say that because as a shamanic healer, the underlying cause of most mental and physical health problems is some kind of karmic effect, an imbalance in your energy that has to be addressed to allow your energy to flow correctly. Remember what I said about being in flow and how it causes fortunes to align in your favor. Well, that works in reverse as well. So if your project has stalled or hit a roadblock, respond to this challenge by first clearing your own field of negative or trapped energy. Give yourself a series of chakra clearings or hire a professional energy healer. Release your worries and fears through a fire ceremony. Take a purgative plant medicine, etc. Clear the way energetically. Next, divine your way back into right relationship by asking how you got out of balance and how you can get back into it. This may take the shape of offerings and apologies or more meaningful gestures like amending your plans. This is a time-consuming and sensitive process, so just accept whatever messages come and sit with them until you can make sense of it all. If all of that has been addressed and you're still running into roadblocks, then it's time to break out the big guns, jinx breaking and road opening magic. One of my favorite jinx breakers is a coffee bath, meaning brewing some strong black coffee and adding it to a lukewarm bath, or diluting it with cool water and pouring it over you in a shower. While you're immersed in the coffee, or while it washes over you in the shower, you should visualize chains on your wrists breaking and falling off of you while you petition your favorite protective spirit for assistance in breaking any bindings or jinxes that you're suffering under. Road openings are traditionally done with abre camino, which translates literally to open road, and is a mix of herbs which can usually be procured from Amazon and sometimes from botanicas, witchy shops, and places like that. Simply burning abre camino as incense and subfumigating whatever you're using to represent your project or whatever aspect of your project is languishing, as well as yourself thoroughly, while praying to a spirit of the crossroads like Hermes or Hecate, for example, is usually quite sufficient to get things moving, or at least to show you the way or the underlying difficulty in clearer detail. Keeping a lodestone talisman on your project's altar to attract the things that you need and want is another great technique that we've used now for several years and with several different goals and workings. With the road opening ritual, the idea is to blow through blockages and to clear the way ahead. In this case, we want to make the good stuff come to us without effort. A lodestone made into a talisman on an election for prosperity or good fortune can then be fed iron shavings and prayed to regularly to support your other efforts, magical and mundane. Our lodestone talisman was born during a very nice election in the third lunar mansion, which also hosts the fortunate Pleiades and is said to be good for the acquisition of good things. And in general, this idea of feeding and praying to items on your altar for support and dressing them with appropriate talismanic oils and sending your positive intentions to your altar regularly and, frankly, cleaning your altar are all good maintenance and tending practices. Which is important because dreams are like delicate little sprouts, remember, just peeking out into the bright sun for the first time, and they need support. These sprouts won't grow to realize their innate potential unless they're nurtured and supported all along the way with our focus, intention, and energy. Dreams must be tended like a garden of little projects, steps on the way to realizing your grand vision, which you, of course, have to invest time into knowing inside and out in all its complicated, nuanced, and detailed glory. And like a garden, it does all the growing. You mostly just watch and offer your support. A little elbow grease here, a little pest control there, and a lot of light, love, and positive intention. When it comes to tending your dreams, you have to be a patient gardener who learns to appreciate the sometimes long gaps in activity where our busy human minds wander and begin to question ourselves in unhelpful ways. You have to stay true to your faith in the future, because that's what a garden represents. Your support now, one day, will produce a bounty that supports you in return. Thanks for tuning in to the 13th episode of the Postmugglism podcast. It's been a pleasure to share my ideas and passions and experiences with you for the last 13 weeks, and I'm very much looking forward to continuing this new tradition. Our experiences along the way to our jungle paradise have taught us many things, but patience has been simultaneously the most difficult and the most useful lesson that we've learned in this process. Allowing the universe to participate in your life, presenting options to you while you simply operate in a state of receptivity, is a wild experience the first couple of times you swallow deep and follow spirit and faith. But as you start to collaborate with the universe, doors begin to open ahead of you in ways that you simply cannot predict. So you just have to learn to allow for the unexpected and to keep the faith. I hope this episode has given you some useful ways to think about dreaming a better future for yourself and your family, and also provided some tech to use to put these ideas into action. My wife Sarah and I will be traveling to the US to empty our storage unit in Dallas, visit a couple of friends, and see her folks. So while that's happening, I won't be able to produce episodes for a couple of weeks. I think 2. Maybe 3. So hopefully a few weeks from now, I'll be back with episode 14. As always, I'm very grateful that you tuned in for this episode, and I hope you've already taken the opportunity to click the subscribe button wherever you listen to podcasts. If not, go ahead and do that now so that you get notified next time that I publish a new episode of this show. And don't forget to check out my website at www.postmugglism.com, where you can also subscribe to my email newsletter, which will let you know anytime I publish new content like a new article, episode, video, etc., regardless of what platform that I post it on. Take care of these next couple of weeks while I'm traveling, and I'll see you when I return. Until next time.